Coming up in just a few moments here on It's Your Call, we'll meet an example of someone who had an invincible moment in her life. She's Luann Kahn of NBC 10 in Philadelphia, a true invincible survivor. You'll hear her story in just a moment. Right now, though, I'm Lynn Doyle, and we are continuing our discussion with Janet and Vince Paple about their latest book, which is aptly titled Be Invincible. So we're talking about invincible moments. You've shared yours, Vince, with us, and Janet, you shared yours as well. Where did you get the inspiration to find other invincible moments? Where did those characters come from?
Well, we reached out to them. You know, social media is such a great thing now, and so we reached out through social media. And also with our co-writer, Tim, he had a couple of contacts and people that he knew. And between the combination of that, people that we were interested in talking to, some people I knew. I for example, really wanted to talk to Michael Ruzioni because he, to me, is the epitome of it all. And so he lent his story to us.
From the 1980 hockey team.
Yes, and now a friend of mine, Teresa Serio, I do a lot of work with the wounded warriors and paralyzed vets, and Teresa has worked with me in doing that. She lost her leg at the top of her singing career, and now she's such an inspiration to the troops. So that was some of it, and then some great ideas that Janet had given me.
And I like the fact that in addition to sharing the invincible moments, you also, Janet, put a perspective on it from a woman's point of view. And I really, that one kind of moved me because we do view things differently than they do, whether anybody wants to believe it or not.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, what Title IX did for us is gave us more to do. You know, remember back in the 70s, 80s, they brought in Title IX. Women had to have equal rights. They had to be able to do the playing field. Well, we also said, oh yeah, we want to work. So now we work, we have babies, we take care of the house. We just added 2 more jobs to us.
So much for equality, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, we're going to give you an opportunity to tell us what your invincible moment is. So if you'd like to do that, you can email me right now at lynn@lynndoyle.net. We have some comments from Facebook, too, that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. But first, I want to bring in Luann Kahn into our conversation. She's a multiple award-winning investigative journalist with the NBC affiliate in Philadelphia. But her biggest challenge has not been in front of the television cameras. In fact, it was several different health scares that she experienced, including a bout with breast cancer. She shared all of that with her TV audience, and it has helped define her invincible moment. Luann, it's so great to have you here.
Good to see you, Lynn.
And I'm so glad to report that you are so healthy and so happy and doing great in your career now.
Thank you. It's 20 years since breast cancer in November. 20 years.
Now, at that time, we didn't have the walkathons and the pink ribbons and the public awareness that we have now. You were actually on the forefront of educating the public about breast cancer. Was that your defining, your invincible moment?
Oh, definitely it was. And you know, there weren't that many young women at that time. We thought of breast cancer as an older woman's disease. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know how many younger women were getting breast cancer. And as my generation came up and started getting it, we were angry and we spoke out. But at the time I was diagnosed, I was 34 years old, just turned 35. I didn't know anyone who had breast cancer. There was no one in my family who had breast cancer. I was terrified. I didn't know if I'd survive. And I was so angry, you know, I wanted to speak out about it.
I was going to say, is that what motivated you to talk about it? Because my mother had breast cancer around that same time, and she was relatively young to have gotten it. And she was a nurse and felt like she really needed to put a voice out there and let other women know that we could talk about it.
Well, that was exactly it. I'll tell you the truth. When I was diagnosed, I had felt a lump, and my gynecologist said, I don't think it's anything to worry about, because I had a negative mammogram. And when I finally got to a breast surgeon, they really dismissed what I was saying. And finally, after 6 months of walking around with this breast cancer that kept getting bigger, finally I was diagnosed because I kept pursuing it. I was dismissed, and I knew if that happened to me, that it was happening to other women, and I had to talk about that.
You know, it's interesting, when I was reading Vince and Janet's book, and you shared that story in your invincible moment, it took me back to when my mother was diagnosed, because here my mother was an operating room nurse, a registered nurse, who had also in self-exam found a lump and was told by her older doctor, don't worry about this. I'll let you know if there's anything to worry about. And the story echoes yours, because for 6 months she kept saying, this is not right. But she didn't have a voice, an advocate for herself, until she finally went to someone else, and he said, we got to get this out of here right away. It's cancer. It's malignant.
And you know what? We were the lucky ones. I hate to tell you how many young women at that time just were told to go away, and they did, and they didn't make it. So we were very lucky that we listened to our gut and we pursued it.
So we know your invincible moment. How did you all get together? Why did you want to be included in this book? Why did you feel it was important?
You know, I really relate to their book, and I really understand, I think, what they're talking about. And one of the things I thought that was so important, what Vince and Janet said, was that you're either fighting, sometimes in your best moment, you're fighting for something or you're fighting against something. You got to find that passion. And we all have a role to play, and sometimes you just know in your gut when it's your time to step up. My dad was a social worker, and I think I always learned as I was growing up, there are times you got to step up, not just for yourself, but for other people.
That seems like a lot of people will say, gosh, that just takes so much energy, and I am using everything I have just to get through my day. I'd love to have dreams. I'd love to have an invincible moment. I'd love to have a playbook for life that I could follow. But right now, I can just barely survive the day. What do you say to those folks?
Go back to the fundamentals. Always go back to the fundamentals in order to get through and to survive, you know, and those kinds of things that drive you, those kinds of things that motivate you. And as Luann had said, you know, find out what your role is and try to find the passion within that role and just play it out. Janet? What?
I think you have to take time for you. You know, we're on such a treadmill, and we're going from this event to the next event. You have your kids, you're juggling. You forget you in the process. You know, I remember I used to make fun of people. What do you mean you don't have time to work out? You have to make working out part of your daily life. Guess what? If you don't schedule it, it doesn't happen.
Right.
Because you can fill up your life with 100 different things, because there's always going to be somebody pulling at you. So you have to make sure you become a priority and that you are your advocate, because guess what? If you're not, everybody's just going to keep taking because you have the energy.
Women always have that obstacle to overcome because people look to us to be the caretakers and to manage things, and we very often put our own needs
Oh, that's absolutely right.
To the end of the line.
We're always take care of the boss, our husband, our kids, everybody, which is when I talk
hope
about...
not in that order.
No. And you know what I mean.
Although we have the same bosses now, so perhaps our priority has changed.
Right. Put everybody in front of us, but where would they be without us?
Exactly.
So we better be taking care of ourselves.
That applies not only to succeeding in life, but also particularly when it comes to women's health issues.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, Vince, you've had health issues as well.
Yeah.
That's something that you address in the book, and you are an inspiration to people because you too, like Luann, went out there and talked about it at a time when men might not have been as open.
Well, you know, I talk about it. I'm 10 years out from my colon cancer. I had 18-inch resectioning done and became a spokesperson for colon rectal cancer awareness. It's a beautiful thing about the movie that it gives me now a platform, and not just here in the Delaware Valley, but all over the country, and I go out and speak. But I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for her. You know, because Janet says, look, you got to get it physical. You know, you can run this, you can do that, but that's on the outside. What's going on the inside? And thank goodness I go, and then they find out there's this polyp, and they take it out. So I always tell people, especially my age, or if you haven't had a colonoscopy by the time you're 50 years old, take the test. You might like it. You know, who knows? And you'll never know what they find in there. You know, the last one I got, I found my father's shoe. So, you know, but you know, you got to have fun with it. But the message is there that really the cure to a lot of cancers is early detection.
Right.
And colon cancer is without a doubt one of the most curable, if not the most curable cancer there is out there, but you have to have early detection. But Janet's the one. If it weren't for her, I would never taken that test. I'm okay. There's no symptoms, right?
Right.
So.
Well, we've asked our Facebook audience if they wanted to share some obstacles and have some questions for Vince, Janet, and Luann. And one of the things that I asked was, what's the biggest obstacle that you've ever overcome, or what's holding you back right now? And people have written in. One says, what if you have like no support system? If you're out there and you're struggling on your own and you don't have people who can help you make these dreams come true, where do you find them? Who do you look to?
Mentors.